Yep, we do.
All right, then. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Presuming that we have the Brian Stubbs linguist slide in front of you, then we'll proceed. Is my screen share working?
Yes, it is, Paul.
Very good. All right, I do want to begin this evening by noting that this is the first time in a couple of months for my wife to have a chance to come and share with us. The fact that we got her home from the hospital on Friday, and she is in a long, slow recovery process, and will, well, after I've taken care of the introductions and we've given it over to Brian, then I'll go get her and pull her in because she wants to be a participant, but it's a slow process for her to be able to get ready and dressed and so forth. Brian Stubbs is a linguist. He has retired from teaching English and linguistics at the College of Eastern Utah and Utah State University at the San Juan campus. He earned his MA in linguistics from the University of Utah, completed coursework and comprehensive exams toward a PhD in Near Eastern languages and linguistics. His coursework in Hebrew, Arabic, Aramaic, and Egyptian was followed by years of personal study of those languages and several dozen Native American languages. He's presented many papers at professional conferences and published numerous articles on the Uto-Aztecan language family in linguistic journals. And notable among his publication is Uto-Aztecan, a comparative vocabulary of 2011, and that has become the standard for that particular topic. I mean, there are not that many people who are linguists in the world in the first place, and to be the specialist in a given language is rather remarkable. But since in the last 2 centuries we are seeing 1,000 of the languages that used to exist are no longer extant. No one is speaking about half the languages that were here 100 years ago, and therefore we lose all the wisdom that is lost when we lose a language. He's one of those specialists who helps to try to retain those languages, and I'm especially pleased to have him as our speaker and guest this evening. His comparative vocabulary, the new standard reference work in the comparative Uto-Aztecan linguistics. He and his wife Sylvia are the parents of 5 children, and they are also great grandparents, as are we. Have been married almost as long as Rena and myself. They've got to 50 years, they're headed toward 51. His book, The Changes in Language from Nephi to Now, inspired me to book him for 2 sessions, and the depth and breadth of his research merits our attention and acclaim. So I welcome him and ask that you stretch a bit to follow the results of his investigation. And by the way, he is making his books available at a cut rate, and so I encourage you to acquire them because he's invited back again next week. Let us pray. Author of the first word, the pregnant encapsulation of meaning. We bow in appreciation that your word produced the Alpha and Omega, the stars, the seas, the flowering meadows greening. You spoke the word, and its character sprang forth, erupting atoms, molecules, volcanoes and fountains, seas and mountains, all over the earth. You spoke the word, and the cycle of life, with all its hungry parts, became whole. You spoke the word, molded the clay, breathed to make man, a living soul. And in your words we find meaning, cognates through which to glean the past, roots of thoughts still growing as we uncover your encapsulations so vast. And so this evening, as we bow to appreciate the work of Brian Stubbs, a linguist to bring old cognates into view, we ask your blessing on him and on us, that our understanding of your word will magnify our understanding of you. Though remote in space, remote in time, the ties he brings to light inform us of the interconnectedness of all existence in your sight. So thank you, Lord, for the sense of meaning that we gain from grappling with your word. And thank you for the sense of belonging as we grapple with each other, as with differing understandings we are stirred. We invoke your blessing upon this Book of Mormon forum session convening and ask that your whispers of your words enhance our sense of belonging to our cause, and to its meaning. In the name of Jesus Christ, embodiment of the word, with you from the beginning. Amen. Sorry, Brian Stubbs, I got these Suggs in there somehow by mistake, but hopefully you'll recognize yourself and take it over from here. And welcome to the rest of you that have joined. I am delighted to see that we have some people I haven't met previously, and please stay with us at the end and add yourselves to the list for Robert to send mailings out to, and we'll anticipate opportunity for discussion at the end of the presentation. Brian, the floor is yours.
Very good, thank you. Yeah, I've been called worse. Whatever, typos are nice after some things. Let's see. Let's see. I didn't
The
share screen,
share.
and I can't find my. Is this it? Maybe this is it.
There you go.
Can you see it, everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
It's on Pharaoh's dream with the Hebrew.
Yes. Let's go back to the. Let's start with the beginning. Okay. Okay. Can everybody see that? Our first slide.
Yes.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to present to y'all. And what we're going to do is go through some. We have a lot of stuff. There's 84 slides, and luckily we have 2 times, so we don't have to get through all of it tonight. And some of the slides, a lot of the language data is kind of, I don't know, it's kind of put some people to sleep. And so what we're going to do is go light on it. For each slide with language data, I'll mention 2 or 3 of the cognate sets so you can get an idea of what it's all about. And we'll do a little more talking about other things, the significance of it all, and so forth. Okay, hey, let's launch and get started. Just to give you a little bit of background of what I've done in Uto-Aztecan, I actually started studying Uto-Aztecan 35 years ago. This book, by the way, can you see my little marker there when I'm pointing to things? That
Yes.
in fact, I've got, let's see.
Yes.
I can, anyway, this book took 30 years to produce. It has 2,700 cognate sets, and we'll talk about those in a minute. You'll know what those are. It's groups of related words descended from the same ancient word. The last published book on Uto-Aztecan had 514 cognate sets. This one has 2,700. So it was and in the journals, it got a good review, a very good review. All of the Uto-Aztecanists were very happy about it, praised it, so forth. And then this is a White Mesa Ute dictionary. It's a Ute dialect just south of me, about 12 or 15 miles. There's a small Ute reserve, 200 people, 20 of them still speak the language. We put together this dictionary of their dialect of Ute. And it's good to get languages recorded before they die out. This third one is what Jerry Grover sponsored and helped me publish. Without his help, it would have taken a few more years, but with his help, we got it out in 2015. I should have moved it over a bit. But anyway, when this came out, I sent it to about 15 or 20 of the best Uto-Aztecan scholars. These are all PhDs in linguistics who specialize in Uto-Aztecan. All right, I should say I sent the preliminary edition to them to get feedback. And about 5 of them said, hey, this is interesting, good and solid. Yep, you've got the sound correspondences, everything matches up, it works, it's good solid tie, things like that. And the other 25 were silent. They didn't want to say anything. It's very much like last week talking about these scholars. They don't want to ruin their career by saying anything good about something that might imply the Book of Mormon might be true, and so forth. Then after those 3 monstrous reference works, I mean, those are just huge. These 2 took 30 years, that one took 3. Then in the shorter one, we take some of that data and present it for lay readers and talk about its relevance to the Book of Mormon. This one is all Uto-Aztecan, no Hebrew or Egyptian mentioned in it. This one is simply a linguistic treatment of the Hebrew, Egyptian, the Semitic, I need to say Semitic, it's both Hebrew and Aramaic, and Egyptian ancestry of partial ancestry of Uto-Aztecan. And then this one is, but that one that Jerry helped me produce or sponsored the production of was a reference work for linguists and Semitic scholars and so forth. So it's not fun reading for a layperson. But this one on the left, Changes in Languages from Nephi to Now, it's written for lay readers. It takes some of the data, has explanations, and talks about what it all means and its relevance to the Book of Mormon. This one is my English textbook, and that's just if a person happens to be interested, it has nothing to do with Uto-Aztecan or the Book of Mormon. What I did is I end up teaching one branch of linguistics is teaching English as a second language, and that's what I ended up doing for 30 plus years. Mostly, I also taught some linguistics classes and other things, but after teaching out of 6 or 8 books on how to write a research paper, I decided that books on how to write a research paper are about as interesting as a phone book. So I thought, I can at least write one that's more interesting, whatever else, whoever wants to say about it. So I did, and the students really liked it. And in fact, this is the 4th edition of it. A lot of people are liking it. And so it's getting used various places in the Intermountain West. Anyway, let's go to our matter of Hebrew and Aramaic. Let's start with those. This is a verse from, a few verses, I should say, from Genesis chapter 41, 1 through 4, Pharaoh's dream. Just to see, so you can see what Hebrew looks like and sounds like. I'll just read a little bit of it for you. In fact, I'll have the cursor. Can you see that cursor? I'll have the cursor of the words as I read. Vayehi miketz shenatayim yamim. And it came to pass at the end of 2 years, Ufar'o cholem v'hine omed al hayor. And Pharaoh had a dream, or was dreaming. And behold, he stood, it says on the river, literally, but at the river's edge. V'hine min hayor olot sheva parot yafot mar'e ubriot basar v'tir'ena ba'achu. Okay, so what that means is, and behold, from the river came up out 7 heifers, cows, pretty of appearance, and healthy or fat of flesh, and they grazed on that type of reed. V'hine sheva parot acherot olot achareichen min hayaor raot mar'e v'dakot basar. Okay, and behold, and then 7 other cows came up besides them from the river. They were bad of appearance and thin of flesh. V'ta'amodna etzel haparot al sifat hayaor. And they stood by the other cows. V'tokalna haparot raot hamar'e hadakot habasar et hasheva haparot yefot hamar'e v'habriot v'yiketz par'o. Okay, I can't remember where I started. Let's see, right here, I think, verse 4. And The cows of bad appearance and thin of flesh ate the 7 cows of pretty appearance and healthy. And then the Pharaoh woke up the Pharaoh. The verb is first in Hebrew. Anyway, this is from the Aramaic New Testament or the Syriac New Testament. It's the same thing. Syriac is simply a dialect of Aramaic, but very, very much the same almost as Biblical Aramaic. Maybe I won't read all this in the interest of time, but I'll just tell you a story. This is kind of one of my favorite scriptures, I guess, because it's about Peter and John's race to the sepulcher. And of course, it's in the book of John, so John is writing, and John wins. He wants readers to know that. But B'chad b'Shabbat, then Ithat Maria Magdalata, okay? And on the first of the week came Miriam Magdalena, we say in English, Basafra Qad Cheshuk Lebet Kabura, Wachazat Lakifa the Shakila Min Kabra. Okay, she came in the morning, it was still dark, to the sepulcher, to the place of burial, and she saw the stone had been lifted from the grave or from the cave, the sepulcher. Maybe I won't read all this, but hey, let's just translate it quickly. And she ran and came to Simon the rock, or Simon Peter, and to that other apostle who happens to be John, the Rachem Hoa Yeshua, which Jesus loved. Uamra, that's it. Oh, and she said to them that the rock was moved away from our Lord's sepulcher, and she didn't know. She didn't know how that happened. Anyway, so Simon and that other apostle, they came to the. I missed the line. Let's see, did I miss the line? Anyway, they ran to the sepulcher. Oh yes, here it is, and they're running, the two of them together, and that other apostle, he ran ahead of Simon, and he came before him to the sepulcher. Okay, hey, fun. Now this is just something that's interesting. I just put this in here, but we might talk more about these things later. This is the remember in the Book of Mormon it talks about Ishmael from this group that left Jerusalem, and they traveled along the shore of the Red Sea, it says in the Book of Mormon, and they named the various places, most of them, until they get to Nahom, and they did not name it. It was already called Nahom. It's in a place called Nahom. It's where Ishmael died. And from that point, they turned nearly eastward until they got to the seashore. Now, what's interesting is they have since, in fact, just recently, last 20 or 30 years or so, discovered Nahom. And not only have they discovered it, but it is written in stone, the name of it. Here's one of them. I think there's 2 or 3 places where there are monuments or sepulchers where the name of Nahom, this says Ben Nahom, right there, N-H-M, son of Nahom, Ben Nahom. And so that's amazing. I've had archaeology. One scholar friend of mine said that when he was going to graduate school in archaeology, his PhD professor that was, of course, did not believe in the Book of Mormon, but when he found out about Nahom, he kind of looked at it a while and he studied up on it. Later he crossed paths with him again. He said, now that's impressive. so even a PhD in archaeology thought it was impressive. Okay, hey, I'm going to skip to slide 15. I'm going to skip all of those. We can talk about them tomorrow if we have time and if you want to, but let's start with Native American languages. Yeah, Native American language, the claim that Hebrew and Egyptian languages mentioned in the Book of Mormon have not been found in the Americas was true. You know, in the past, they had not been found yet, but that is changing. In the Americas are 1,500 to 2,000 different Native American languages belonging to between 160 to 170 different language families. Everybody agrees that there are at least 160. One count has 170. That means each of those is not related to the others. The other 159, that's a huge variety. Lots of things came to the Americas, and we don't know what all. I think a good number of them could possibly be Jaredites. This is a map of just North America, basically. In fact, only the north part of Mexico and north. These are the language families in North America, and you can see there are many of them. This big green one here is Uto-Aztecan, and it's down here also. You can see there are about 20 or 30, probably more like 30 or 40 different small language families just on the West Coast, California, Oregon, and Washington. A huge variety. One of those language families is the one we're going to talk about this evening, and that's Uto-Aztecan. The name comes from the Utes on the north to the Aztecs on the south. So all of these are the Ute groups here in Utah and the west half of Colorado and so forth. And they over here in the Los Angeles and San Diego area are many smaller Uto-Aztecan languages. And linguists can figure out, can demonstrate that all of this northern half of Uto-Aztecan, all of these right here, came out of the Los Angeles area, Los Angeles, San Diego area. They came out of Southern California. This is Hopi right here. This southern half of the language family are on the west coast of Mexico. Now let's, Uto-Aztecan is a language family of about 30 related languages in the Southwest United States and Mexico. Let's talk about, most languages are mixtures, just as English is a mixture of Old English, Germanic, and French and Latin. Only 15% of modern English from its original Old English. The other 85% is from French, Latin, and Greek, etc., mixing in. Another example of language mixture is Yiddish. The language of the European Jews is only about 15% Hebrew and Aramaic, original Hebrew and Aramaic of the Jews. The other 85% is mostly from German and some from Slavic and a few other languages that they passed through and were neighbors to and lived among. And that's what happens when languages, wherever they are, they borrow from the neighboring languages. That's just what happens. Uto-Aztecan, though, is perhaps about 40% from Semitic and Egyptian, mixed in with who knows what else. That'll require a few more lifetimes. I've spent my lifetime just figuring out that Hebrew, Aramaic, and Egyptian is a large chunk of the ancestry of Uto-Aztecan. Here's a paragraph. That's just an example of how much mixing has happened in English. The yellow, those that are highlighted in yellow, are French loans into English, and those that are bold are from Old English. You can see not that many of that. And those that are italicized are from Latin. And let's just read this for fun. Critics claim Joseph's use of French adieu in Jacob 7:27 shows a charlatan's effort to get fancy with a French term in an English translation. What they fail to realize is that half of English is French. In 1066, the Norman French conquered and ruled England, influencing English for centuries. We adopted more French into English than we retained of Old English. Modern English kept merely 15% of the Old English vocabulary. French and Latin loans replaced 85% of Old English. Most astonishing is the ignorance of the critics and not checking to discover that adieu is English. It is from Middle English adieu, which is from Old French adieu. In fact, it was in the the Middle English dictionaries. It was more of a part of the language earlier, I suppose. Not only that, but remember, Joseph Smith is right south of the French border where French was the language spoken. So in those dialects, it might have been a common word, who knows? And so it has been part of the English language and anyway. Well, we might have been following the same route as the other 20,000 French words in English. Actually, there's more than that. I toned it down. I think the source I read said more like 40,000. In other words, adieu has been English as long as all the other highlighted terms. In this paragraph, the French loans are highlighted, words from Old English are in bold, and Latin loans italicized, while the words from other sources, as well as articles, prepositions, proper nouns, are not marked. Okay, so hey, English is a mixture too. Now, what we're going to do is give you a very briefly a one-page linguistics course. Okay, don't worry about it. You know, just enjoy listening and absorb what you can. And if you don't understand, we can answer questions later, or it's not critical you understand everything. Actually, nobody understands everything. So, hey, just enjoy what you can. A language family is a group of related languages descended from one parent language. So each language family descends from one language. But sounds change consistently to set up sound correspondences among related languages. For example, Indo-European, P went to F in Germanic, T went to Th, and K went to H. This is a general pattern of stops, like PT and K, going to fricatives, F, Th, and H. For example, we have hound in English, Hund in German, cognate with Latin canis, that's where we get canine from, and quon in Greek. Sanskrit did some funny things there. Another one with KH is heart and herz in German, cardia in Greek, cord as in cordial, a cart in Hittite, you know, that ancient language of southern Turkey and northern Palestine. Very interesting. P to F, we have examples of that. Pater, Peter in Greek, Latin, and Sanskrit, but father in English, Vater in German, the V being pronounced like an F. Same with foot and Fuß in German, pod, ped, pod, pata. Anyway, that's how sound correspond. Oh, and here's thou, du, tu, tuvam, tuk in ancient Hittite. Yeah, water, Wasser in German, water, water in Hittite. Wow. Oh, and three, yeah, three, drei, tres, trayas in Sanskrit, three in Hittite. Interesting, the Hittite, that ancient language clear there, is related to English. The comparative method requires finding as many words as you can with consistent sound correspondences, because linguists have found out that that's how the sounds change, is in consistent patterns. And with some morphology would be nice. Some of the grammar things, a unit of meaning, usefulness, for example, has 3 morphemes. A morpheme is a unit of meaning and so forth. Let's skip some of that. One thing that often happens is first sounds and last sounds get left off over time. People just quit pronouncing them. Silent letters. For example, we have Kanifa, which we now know as knife, and that's because the original K got left off and the final vowel got left off, and we pronounce the middle 3 now. Consonant clusters, that's where 2 consonants come together, like the BT and det. We don't say debt, we don't say the B, it's silent. Walk and talk, we don't say walk and talk, the L is silent. Very often the first consonant, when you have 2 consonants together, that's a consonant cluster, will be silent. Salmon, that's silent. Exmit, to send out, the X got left off and it's now emit, and so forth. Or they'll assimilate, they'll become similar to the sound next to them. For example, incorrect, opposite of correct, incomplete. But in front of certain sounds, it changes to an M when it's next to another bilabial, impossible, imperfect. And it changes completely when next to an R or an L. Illegal becomes illegal, illogical becomes illogical, irregular, irresponsible, and so forth. Okay, you now have first course of linguistics behind you. Okay, Sapir, Edward Sapir was a linguist who established Uto-Aztecan as a language family. He did with 2 articles in 1913 and 1915, just a little over 100 years ago. And then 50 years later, Vogelin, and Hale, 3 linguists, produced 171 cognate sets. Now, a cognate set, well, it says right here, a group of related words from one ancient word. Miller published 500, I think that's supposed to be 14. That's one I just told you about. Ken Hale kept working on it. He put together 1,200. And then in 2011, I published that book I just showed you that had 2,700 sets and so forth. Now that's comparing to other language families. For example, Clark, a linguist who first wrote the article to to show Chumash as a language, or Chumash as a language family, only used 168 sets to prove that and convince everybody. Everybody accepted it. Taylor put together an article on Caddoan, the 107 cognate sets. Hale put together an article for Kiowa-Tanoan with 99 sets. Haas United Algonquin Ritwan with 93 sets. And the case that I put together in that book that I showed you that Jerry Grover helped me produce, in there we have 1,528 cognate sets from about 700 from Aramaic, about 400 from Phoenician, and about 400 from Egyptian. And so it's a good, strong case with about 10 times as the usual amount in establishing a language family. Okay, and here are some examples of the sound change. For example, B, Hebrew and Aramaic B became P in Uto-Aztecan. Barak, lightning. Berok, in Uto-Aztecan generally, about 10 languages. Berok, specifically in Mayo. Baka, cry. Baka, cry or yell. Bat, daughter. Bata, daughter. Bo, and so forth, okay? Number 5, we'll be seeing this in other language families. So yeah, basar, meaning flesh, and etc. Uto-Aztecan, pisa, also, same word. Now, because BD and G all become PT and K, that's just devoicing, okay? These voiced consonants, devoiced. For example, dubur, buttocks, tupur in Uto-Aztecan, and so forth. We don't have time to look at all of them. We'll come back. If we have time later or next week, we can come back and look at as many as you want. But for now, let's just run through them. This is an interesting group because it brings up our next point. Proto-Semitic va remained va in Arabic, but became a stop D in Aramaic. D in Hebrew it became Z. Okay, D's, remember we showed you the last slide, all the D's devoiced to T in Uto-Aztecan. That's our first hint. Many of these words are from Aramaic, not Hebrew. For example, Dakar, the word for male in both Hebrew and Aramaic and most Semitic languages. Taka in man, same word, just missing the final R, just like the other word was missing the final R. Here's Aramaic dikna. Now, Aramaic has the at the end of the word, so the dikn with a diaqa-n is the word for chin, and means the. So this means chin the. Dikna means chin the. Uto-Aztecan, the word for mouth, or which is in the chin area, tutna. Now this is interesting because it's not anything like Hebrew, hazakan. Okay, in Hebrew, ha, doubling the first consonant, is the, and it's put in the front. None of that, but it's a Z. None of that, but the vowels are different. So this is how you say the chin in Hebrew, hazakan, with long vowels. In Aramaic, dikna. Uto-Aztecan is tutna. Almost identical to Aramaic, not at all like Hebrew. Here's another one. Aramaic, titba, wolf, the. In Uto-Aztecan, the word for wolf, tutba. And not from Hebrew, hazaeb. Okay, zaeb is the Hebrew word for wolf, and ha in front of it, the. So the wolf in Hebrew is hazaeb. That's not anything like that, but it's like Aramaic, titba, Uto-Aztecan, tutba. Okay. Anyway, the Lehi Ishmael dialect was Aramaic-like, it seems, it would appear. Aramaic was the original language of the Israelites, not Hebrew. Did you know that? Yeah, Hebrew is Israel's dialect of Canaanite or Phoenician that they borrowed or adopted, that was adopted by Israel after entering Canaan. And here we're going to show you this map of ancient Israel, the different land grants. Here is Manasseh. Remember that Lehi was from Manasseh, and who knows, maybe Ishmael was too. He was Ephraim, so he was from up here somewhere. And that area in the northeast is right next to this huge Aramaic-speaking area. In fact, where Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Leah and Rachel came from the east, from the Aramaic-speaking areas. This was the Aramaic Empire, a huge empire, lots of people. And not only did they leave there, were originally speaking Aramaic, but also they lived next to it, which would help them retain their Aramaic or relearn it even if it was lost. Let's take a look at what we say about, whoops, what we say about that. Wait a second, what did I do? Let me find my place again. Okay, that. Okay, yeah, I've already said some of this. Leah was of the tribe of Manasseh. Notice the northeast Manasseh area next to Aramaic speaking areas where Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Leah, and Rachel all came from, and where Laban, the Aramaean, lived. Okay, it says in the Old Testament, Laban, the Aramaean, from the places where the Aramaeans were, where Aramaic speakers were, and Leah and Rachel are his daughters. Some scholars think that the Northern Kingdom Israelites never lost their Aramaic, living next to the large international language of Aramaic, especially Manasseh. But they may have added Canaanite Hebrew and became bilingual. Kind of said most of that. Believers and non-believers have both assembled their separate sets of misconceptions about the Book of Mormon. So as truth emerges, everyone gets to be surprised in some ways, and I was surprised myself. Surprises include at least these three things. These are the ways in which I was surprised, I should say. And before we get done, you'll see that all of this points to Uto-Aztecan being descended from the Lehi-Ishmael merger. At first, I had figured it was a Lamanite language, and I was looking for just Hebrew. But as I found after what I found, I realized not only that, but we have the name of the Nephites in some of the tribes. We'll get to that later. But these are some of the surprises. One is that much Aramaic is in Lehi's language, or was in it, and is in the descendant languages, a whole bunch of it, suggesting that hey, Lehi and Ishmael's group were probably speaking probably an Aramaic Hebrew mix, because there's some Hebrew in it too, but it's probably more Aramaic than Hebrew. And it's also a surprising amount of Egyptian. We'll get to that later also. And the first 5 male names of Lehi's family, okay, Lehi, Laman, Lemuel, Sam, and Nephi, are all prominent in Arabic, but not Hebrew. And most of those names were not known in Joseph Smith's day. So believers are surprised that they are Arabic names, not Hebrew. They're surprised by that fact, while non-believers should be surprised and impressed that they were all later discovered to be real names of the era and area. Okay, so yeah, most of those were not even known as real names when the Book of Mormon came out. And how could he have guessed these real names that we find out more than 100 years later? They are prominent names in Western Arabia and in the Nabatean area, just south of Jerusalem a little ways. And so who knows what that means for also, there are a number of scholars who say that there were Israelites that were down in Arabia area. So it's possible that some of Lehi's ancestry came from that area. Who knows? Lots to figure out yet. However, those are the first 5 names. Now notice that after Lehi gets the record of the Jews, the last 2 sons, Jacob and Joseph, get typical Jewish names. Now that's interesting. Another sound change, glottal stop to W, and this also happens in Arabic, by the way. Ari, lion. Wadi in Uto-Aztecan means mountain lion. So that glottal stop right there, which is that's the where you cut off the air, became W, and everything matches. Hebrew, this is a long word. Ya'amino means he believes him or he believes it. Uto-Aztecan, Yawamino, to believe him or it. Amazing match of what, 8 segments, I think. Ego is not tree, woko. This is a good one. Ya, to be beautiful. Yawa. In Luiseño, changing the glottal stops to W. But another Uto-Aztecan language, Serrano, has just glottal stops, like Semitic. And we'll get back to that later, probably. Let's move on. And if I'm going fast, just realize, yeah, I know you can, this is going to be recorded, so you can listen to it as many times as you want and slow it down, or you can buy the book. And all of this is in the book, by the way. Yeah, R, when it's at the beginning of the word, changes to T. Now that might sound strange, but it does happen in some language changes. By the way, this Ra'ah, to see, the Wa, to find or see in Uto-Aztecan, that was in the paragraph that we read you, or the little story that we read you. Aramaic, another Aramaic word, Rimta, Uto-Aztecan, Tumata. Aramaic, Remana, antelope, the. Uto-Aztecan, Tumana. Rakabu, Tupu, they climbed for both of them, and so forth. Okay, we need to cover this one. This pharyngeal H, it's not like an English H, but ho, it's a pharyngeal ho, and it's really a guttural H, and it goes to who or ho in Uto-Aztecan, or sometimes to a round vowel. It causes rounding, like the wa or oo or who with an H sound. And there are a number of words that show that. Chaberet, hoopy, and so forth. To rub off and wash, upa, and so forth. In fact, there's 20 to 30 examples of that. I just put 3 to show you that it does work. Here's another pharyngeal. This is a voiced pharyngeal, and actually we have it it's in Saudi Arabia, but we don't pronounce those in English. We just say Saudi Arabia, but in Arabic it's Saudi Arabia. What's interesting is that this Ein in Phoenician became Greek O. That shows even back then it was rounded, okay? And the same thing in Uto-Aztecan, it becomes a W, like we have right up here. Ein becomes Uto-Aztecan W or U. Agol, round. Wakol, round. Paka, species of fungus. Uto-Aztecan, pakua, mushroom fungus. Olamat, cloud, to become cloudy, become dark. Wuma. And this capital C just means that linguists can tell that there's a consonant there, but they don't know what it is. So this really does fit. I mean, that consonant that they don't know what it is that T right there. Oh, and I might mention that, yeah, in these Semitic verbs, the vowels are not written. And so, but in pronunciation, I mean, they were pronounced, but we don't often know all of the vowels. And so this really matches perfectly, and so forth. We won't go through all of those. Many sounds remain the same. Let's just mention one here. For example, muka, to be smitten in Hebrew. Muki in Uto-Aztecan. Maybe you've heard of the Moki ruins. Here in the Southwest, a lot of people call the Hopi ruins the Moki ruins. And the Hopi are known as the Moki because they kind of died out. Muki in Uto-Aztecan means to die, be sick, or be smitten. From Muka, Hebrew, smitten. And a whole bunch of others that we won't have time to look at. Not now, anyway. Here are a few interesting words. This kacha, to be inexpressive, disheartened. Kachacha, Uto-Aztecan, sad. It even preserves the H's. It's amazing. That those, anyway, in Aramaic, kukya, spider, the. Uto-Aztecan, kukyang, spider. Wow, a perfect match, except it's got that extra stuff on the end. And the Semitic pharyngalized saw becomes regular S in Uto-Aztecan. For example, shore, navel, sur in Arabic, navel. Serrano, sur in Uto-Aztecan means navel. Sanawbar, Sanawap in Shoshone and Uto-Aztecan, pine tree, and so forth. Okay, this is interesting because this particular sound change shows that this dialect of Aramaic, Hebrew mix, is from pre-exilic Israelite language. Because what happened is these two sounds, the ka and the ha, merged and became the same thing about 300 BC, but they were different from Abraham's day until about 300 BC. And this particular dialect shows that they are different. So this is from very early Hebrew and Aramaic. Whereas the other one we're going to look at, these have merged, which shows that they're from Phoenician or later Hebrew. But anyway, and this ha goes to Uto-Aztecan K, what is the, kilda, mol, the, kita, groundhog, kole, sick, koli, sick, and so forth. Oh, this is a great one. Aramaic, kokva, Uto-Aztecan, kupa. Okay, remember we talked about when you have two, you see that consonant cluster there, the KB? When you got two of them together, often the first one changes to be the same as the second one. Exactly what happened in Uto-Aztecan, as happens a lot in Uto-Aztecan and also in English. Okay, I think we're getting toward the end of our of the data before we get into more interesting stuff. Oh, this is a great one. Al-Gaza, to age or grow old, specifically of women. Tarahumara, one Uto-Aztecan language has Wagatsa. Okay, it's got the W matching the line and every. And for this one, it's a Z, not a that. Anyway, it also means specifically to grow old of women. I mean, that's very specific semantics matching perfectly a Semitic word. Okay, now we're going to start on the Egyptian, but we're only going to show you a little bit of Egyptian, and then we'll talk about it. We'll show you more later if we want. Egyptian, one of the interesting things about Egyptian is that it has E suffix on verbs. That's the old perfective or stative suffix. And the same thing in Uto-Aztecan, E. Examples are, whereas if it's active, it's ah. Korah has this, all of these are Uto-Aztecan languages, and I'll tell you what they are. I just got the abbreviations there, as in the book. Korah E, stative suffix. Yaki E, stative suffix, just like Egyptian. Wichol, sana, means to break. Sani, broken. Okay, so see it's passive or suffix or stative. Tso'a, put out a fire. So E, there is no fire. It's been put out. Taramara, and this is in a lot of Uto-Aztecan languages. Mana, to put or set. From Egyptian, mana, and Taramara, mani, to be set or put, to exist. Same thing, that is also in classical Nahuatl. That CN is classical Nahuatl. Put something on the floor. Mani, to be stretched out, extended, be put on the floor, in other words, and so forth. We don't need to run through all of them. Here are a few other words. Subak, crocodile, supak. And by the way, I'm not the one who found this. Cyrus Gordon, the great Ugaritic scholar who has since passed, he published this in his book, and in my book I cite he's the first one to find the first Egyptian parallel between Egyptian and Uto-Aztecan, and I just found 400 more is all. Nemi, to travel or walk around, traverse. Nemi and Uto-Aztecan, to walk around, that's a perfect match, and all of these are perfect matches, and there are about 400 of them, but we don't have time to go through all of them. Therefore, let's tell a little bit about what all of this means. We will later look at more of the 400 Egyptian cognate sets in Uto-Aztecan, but those few bring us to Nephi, who said in the second verse of the Book of Mormon, I make a record in the language of my father, which consists of the learning of the Jews and the language of the Egyptians. Now that has been confusing LDS scholars for almost 200 years. Exactly what that means has been debated by LDS scholars since I was born. The debate started when I was born. Okay, that's a long time ago. Sidney B. Sperry in 1950 proposed that the Nephites were writing Hebrew, the language of the learning of the Jews, in an Egyptian script or writing system. Hugh Nibley, 2 years later, published his differing opinion, saying that no, that is not right. He argued that the Nephites were dealing with the actual Egyptian language and Hebrew too, such that the Nephite spoken language eventually became something of a Hebrew-Egyptian mix. A package of supports can be marshaled for either view when considering only the 3 or 4 statements in the text. So the Sperry-Nibley debate came to an impasse. And I told the BYU scholars about 25 years ago that the best source for an answer lies in Native American languages. And they said, oh yeah, well, okay. And by the way, I've been working with them for 40 years. They know of my research and I've interacted with them. And if some of the languages can be identified as descended from some of the peoples of the text, we can learn much from what they have. If there is Hebrew, but hardly any Egyptian, then Sperry is right. And by the way, most of the Hebrew scholars at BYU used to agree with Sperry. They all thought they only knew Hebrew and they were just using an Egyptian writing system. However, if those descendant languages contain significant amounts of Egyptian mixed with Semitic, then Nibley is right. Stubbs, that's the article I published in the Encyclopedia of Mormonism, was open to both views, but leaned slightly with the Hebraists. I was kind of leaning. I wasn't sure who was right. I respected Nibley. I took Egyptian from him. I loved Nibley. But I thought, gee, maybe he's wrong this one time. And so I was leaning slightly with the Hebraists, but I was keeping an open mind until in Uto-Aztecan, I find a whole bunch of Egyptian in Uto-Aztecan that convinced him that Nibley was right again. No doubt, some portions of the brass plates and of the Book of Mormon were written in the Hebrew language. Isaiah's writings were on the brass plates and were quoted frequently by Book of Mormon authors. The original language of Isaiah's writings was Hebrew, and there would have been no reason to mess up the fine poetic language of Isaiah's Hebrew by translating it from Hebrew into Egyptian during the mere century plus between Isaiah and Lehi, only 120 years or so, 140 maybe, for Hebrew-speaking Israelites who already spoke Hebrew. In fact, there would have been every reason not to. However, the fact that some portions of the brass plates, such as Isaiah, were in Hebrew does not mean that all other portions of the brass plates were in Hebrew. A careful reading of 1 Nephi 5, verses 10 through 16, suggests that when Lehi searched the brass plates, he may have found different sections, which may have been in different languages. Quoting from those verses, Lehi took the records which were engraven upon the plates of brass, and he did search them from the beginning. And I can't even read what that says. And he found that they did contain the 5 books of Moses, which gave an account of the creation of the world, and also of Adam and Eve. Okay, so that's, and also a record of the Jews from the beginning, even down to Zedekiah, my father. Zedekiah. Then my father also found on the plates of brass a genealogy of his fathers, wherefore he knew that he was a descendant of Joseph. Okay. So Lehi searched the plates from the beginning with its account of the creation, etc. Yet besides that, there was also a record of the Jews from the beginning. Does from the beginning twice mean 2 different sets of records? A Josephite or Northern Kingdom record, which would have been started with the Ephraimites or with somebody in the Northern Kingdom, and also a Southern Kingdom record of the Jews. If so, the record of the Jews was likely in Hebrew, while the Josephite record could well have been in Egyptian, at least in part, or either could have started in Egyptian and later switched to Hebrew, just as the Old Testament switched from Hebrew to Aramaic in Daniel as soon as the Israelites were living in the midst of Aramaic when they were over in Babylon. Because Laban, now this is the Laban in Lehi's time, not the father of Leah and Rachel, because Laban's Josephite lineage kept the brass plates, those plates seem to have been a house of Joseph record, later combined with the record of the Jews. Okay, so we might have, in fact, I think that those verses show us that there were 2 different sets of records, at least 2, maybe more. Now we're going to show you a whole bunch more Egyptian, just briefly, okay? Tut, sandals, Uto-Aztecan tuti, sandal, tahimat, the wife in Egyptian, tahima, spouse, sabak, we don't know the vowels, calf of the leg, sipika, lower leg in Uto-Aztecan. This is interesting, bashi, to spit or vomit. Bashu is the noun form with an O sound, bashol or bashu. That W is just kind of an OU sound in ancient Egyptian. Piso in Uto-Aztecan, to vomit. Sipo, Saba, star, Sipo, Uto-Aztecan, star. Wonderful matches. Like I say, about 400 of them. Same thing as that other, as we saw in Semitic, that other Semitic dialect where the K goes to K, as in the Semitic P dialect. Taku, drunkard, Taku, drunk, Kapsh, foreleg or thigh, Uto-Aztecan, Kapsi, thigh. KPD, we don't know the vowels. Kupta in Uto-Aztecan, same meaning. It's plural, kuptu, kupitu in Uto-Aztecan, plural. Sakat, field or country, pasture. Willow trees, sakat in Uto-Aztecan, grass or willow. And by the way, this is a feminine noun in Egyptian, and the prefix for feminine nouns in Egyptian is ta. And in one Uto-Aztecan language, we have tasakat. It actually has the feminine prefix fossilized into the word. That is amazing grammar preservation, and so forth. We don't have time to look at all of them. These we have to look at. Yes, whole, that pharyngeal H, which also, remember, it goes to who, like we saw in the Semitic dialect. This is Egyptian, remember. And hupiya, to be festive or make festival. Hupiya, to sing or song. It's a certain part of the festivities, but not exactly the same, but it's that kind of change happens easy enough. Hanakat, beer or drinkers. Hunakat, remember the pharyngeal H goes to who, and we have hunaka, means drunk or alcohol. This is amazing. We actually have the vowels of this in Coptic. Hotpa means gracious, peaceable, peace. That means for the sun to set or to bury a person. It has all those meanings, but it mainly means peace and peaceable. In Uto-Aztecan, hupi. And by the way, that's where the word hopi comes from, peaceable. Sink and dive, as to set the sun and bury. Yeah, remember again, we talked about when two consonants are together, like that TP, they'll often, the first one will get absorbed into the second. You have a doubled P, and you actually have a doubled P in Uto-Aztecan. The word Hopi has a doubled P because if it was only one P, it would be pronounced Hovi. And so that shows that there's underlyingly a double P in Uto-Aztecan. And it's the very same Egyptian word, and so forth. We don't have time to go through all of those. Okay, same thing as in that Semitic dialect we were just looking at. The glottal stop goes to W. Here we have M glottal stop E for lion in ancient Egyptian, Coptic mui. And in Uto-Aztecan, another word for mountain lion is mawiya, a perfect match, the glottal stop with the W and the E with the ya. By the way, E and ya are the same sound. And so we have the Semitic word for lion and the Egyptian word for lion, both meaning being transferred to mountain lion in Uto-Aztecan. That's amazing. And tawi or tawa for male or man, tawa, tawi, and so forth, and a whole bunch of others that we don't have time to look at right now, but we might have time to get back to them tomorrow. Again, initial R to T in Tarahumara. Rui, dance. Tuiya or Tawiya in Uto-Aztecan, to dance. Notice the same pattern. We have in the other ones, we've seen about 3 words now with 2 consonants, and then that third one is a E or a Y. And all of Uto-Aztecan, all the ones we have from Uto-Aztecan show an extra A at the end, which is typical of the ancient language stuff. Tawiya and Mawiya, remember that one, and Hubiya, so forth. Remet, Tamat, means man, person, and so forth, a whole bunch of others. We don't have time to look at them all. And maybe we don't have time to look at any of these. Yeah, we can look at them later if we want to. A few of these we need to look at. Qarhat, serpent, partner in Egyptian. Uto-Aztecan, konwa, pharyngeal. I mean a nasal there, which is what happens with this consonant cluster. Liquid plus a pharyngeal will do that kind of thing in Uto-Aztecan. Now, what's interesting is this is the word of Quetzalcoatl. Okay, Coat is the word for snake in Aztec, and it's in almost every Uto-Aztecan languages. It's in most of the 30 languages, a form of Coat or Conwa. And what's interesting is that in Nahuatl, it not only means snake, but it also means twin. In fact, the Spanish in New Mexico, which is Old Spanish from the 1600s, Santa Fe days, the conquistadores days, and they borrowed a lot of Aztec into that old dialect of Spanish. The Spanish of New Mexico, the word for twin is cuate, and that's from coat, Aztec coat, which means both snake and twin. And what's interesting is in Egyptian, it means serpent and partner. I mean, how do you get two meanings so different in Egyptian, and they're those same two meanings preserved so well in Uto-Aztecan? And that happens a lot, by the way. We have about a dozen things like that. Oh, all of these others are so interesting, and we don't have time to look at all of them. Let's talk about this stuff. Okay, the above 122 matches are less than 10% of the 1,500 plus sets in the 2015 book that Jerry and I produced. The above matches from Semitic P are about 700 of mostly Aramaic, but also some Hebrew. And then there are about 400 terms from Egyptian. All of those have the same sound changes or the same sound correspondences. B changes to P, so to S, and glottal stop to W, and we showed you what all those were. And so those were spoken by the same people. Okay, the Egyptian and that Semitic group have the same sound changes. So they were spoken by the same people. But there's a different set of data of a Semitic language, and it has different sound changes. B changes to qua, and so changes to tsa. And the glottal stop does not go to W, it just disappears. And that particular dialect has the sound changes that are like Phoenician. It's not like the old Israeli Hebrew, but it's like Phoenician. Phoenician did these changes, about the time they were creating the alphabet, 1200 BC. So in Phoenician, these changes happened about 1,000 years before they did in the biblical Hebrew, even though the Hebrews, the Israelites, borrowed their language from, well, the Canaanites, and the Phoenicians were like the West Coast Canaanites. So anyway, so the Semitic P and Egyptian data look like they would match Lehi. I mean, it matches what Lehi said he had, and the sound changes match old Israelite sound changes. Whereas the Semitic Kwa dialect has the Phoenician sound changes. And I'm guessing that is the Mulekite contribution. And we'll look at more evidence for that here pretty soon. Let's see, how are we doing time-wise? I better look. Oh my, we've covered an hour already, haven't we? Let me just do a few more slides, and then we can take questions and try to finish next time. Yeah, over time, sounds are changed or lost. In English, we hear, what'd you do? What'd you do yesterday? And the j is a reduction of the final T of what, and the whole of did, and the y of you. Three parts, or parts of three different words reduced to one consonant, j. Yet sometimes Uto-Aztecan actually has things more clear. In fact, Uto-Aztecan has better preserved Egyptian stuff than Coptic did. And there's only like 2,000 years between Egyptian and Coptic, and there's about 4,000 years between Egyptian and Uto-Aztecan. Whoops. So this is really amazing and fun. Okay, this begins the Mulekite stuff, and I'm just going to show you just this one slide, and then we'll go to more of what it means. These are the plural suffixes of Uto-Aztecan. It's ima. You put that on the end of nouns. Okay, the Hebrew im, we have that in Elohim and Urim and Thummim. So we have the im suffix in Hebrew, but we know from Ugaritic and other ancient written sources that it used to be ima. The final a was lost in the Hebrew of the Bible, but it used to be ima. Well, in Uto-Aztecan, the plural suffix is ima. We also have ote, the feminine plural, and in Uto-Aztecan we have te. In fact, we saw ot as the feminine plural in those heifers that came up out of the river. The parot. Para is heifer, and ot, that final ot, is the plural feminine. So but now all of this is not like Arabic at, nor Aramaic at, nor Akkadian at, but like Hebrew and Phoenician ot. Same thing with the plural suffix here. Arabic would be una or ina, Aramaic would be in, Akkadian would be u. So again, this matches Phoenician or Hebrew. And the na passive prefix, identical in Old Hebrew. Nephi, for those that, I know a few of you know a little bit of Hebrew. Yasipa, to sit, dwell, yashav in modern Hebrew, but it came from yeshiva, and same thing in Uto-Aztecan yasipa. Anyway, a lot of interesting stuff like that. Let's see, let me just look forward at a few slides. Let me just show you, preview a little bit about what we're gonna, let me make a note to myself. We got to slide 51. So we'll say, so we need to continue from 50 next time, but let me just show you a little bit about what's coming up. See if there's anything we want to oh yeah, let's dwell on this a little bit. A lot of people ask, why did the Nephites and Mulekites not understand each other if they both left Jerusalem only 400 years before? Well, there's a lot of reasons. I'm going to start with 2 and 3 and go back to 1. In separate places, they lived in separate places, and they were next to different language groups, probably. And so that would cause them to change in different ways, living next to different languages. And then they came together. Also, like English changed from AD 1066 to 1300, in those 250 years, English changed a whole bunch, being next or being ruled by French, being next to French speakers. The same thing happened with Mulekite. Whoever they were next to, they changed that direction. And the Nephites, whoever they are next to, they changed that direction. And they come together and they can't understand each other. Or simply accent and tone can throw people off. I always do this little thing. I did it with my English classes for 30 years. Let me do it with you folks and see how many catch it. I'm going to say a phrase and you tell me what I said. Mechanical ability. Mechanical ability. Anybody catch what I said? What I said was mechanical ability. But all I did was change the accent or the tone pattern. Usually if those 4-syllable words in English have the stress or the accent or tone on the second syllable, mechanical ability. All I did was take it off the second syllable and put it on the first and third. Instead of saying mechanical, mechanical, and ability. And all my classroom full of 30 native speakers of English didn't catch what I said because I put a different tone or accent pattern on it. Let me give you another example. In the neighborhood that I grew up in Los Angeles, all the kids of that neighborhood got in the habit of saying this one sentence this way. It's a complete sentence. And they would say, And y'all know exactly what I said, right? Who wants to tell me what I said? We said, I don't know. And you can tell that just from the tone pattern. I did not give you any of the consonants or the vowels. I did not give you any of the specific sounds of the language, only the tone pattern. And a whole class of 30 knows exactly what I said. Okay, so if in mechanical ability, I give you all of the sounds, but a different tone pattern, but then I give you only the tone pattern and none of the sounds, when you can understand that. Is English a tone language? Yeah, to a degree. Most languages are in certain ways. Anyway, so the Egyptian Semitic P fit Lehi's language. I'm here in the middle of this slide now. Well, Semitic Kwa, this other Semitic dialect that we're going to look at next time, fits the Mulekite contribution to the merger. So the Nephite language changed dramatically after combining with the Mulekites. We're going to talk about that next time. The numbers suggest that the resulting mixture was about 3/4 Nephite language and 1/4 Mulekite language. Now it says they taught the Mulekites their language, and they did. That's why they got 3/4. But it's typical and easily understandable that a certain amount of vocabulary and some of the Mulekite language would come into the combined language. Okay, I think maybe, yeah, that starts the, I just want to show you a map of what we're going to go into next time. Oh, yes. Okay, here's the Uto-Aztecan language family that we were talking about. Oh, I need to tell you that. Let me just explain this. I think, well, let me show you these two maps. These are 29 of the 30 Uto-Aztecan languages. It's only missing the Aztec dialects. Okay, here's Hopi and all these in Southern California is the northern half of the Uto-Aztecan language family. All of these are on the west coast of Mexico, and then down here to the southeast are these Nahuatl dialects. Okay, and there are about 30 of them. This map shows the major ones, but there are more, and some of these dots have 3 or 4 different dialects within that dot. So there are a huge number of Nahuatl dialects. In fact, 1.5 million speakers of Nahuatl still in Mexico, and clear down here to El Salvador and Pipil and El Salvador and Guatemala and so forth. And so my opinion is that the Uto-Aztecans are mainly, remember in Hagoth's time, and I've got a slide saying that, but I won't show you. In Hagoth's time, remember, it says a group, many thousands of them, actually, Hagoth built these boats and they launched into the West Sea and sailed to the land northward. Okay, you've got 29 of the 30 Uto-Aztecan languages either spreading from the Los Angeles area near the sea, or they are on the west coast of Mexico near the sea. I think these are remnants of those who launched into the West Sea and sailed to the land northward, and that the Aztec dialects are survivors or the Gadianton robbers who spoke the Nephite language up in the mountains. You'll notice that most of these are in the mountains. This geographic map shows you that most of these are in the mountains. So, or surviving pockets that just got overlooked, or maybe the biggest part of the destruction was happening here, and these that were out here survived and grew. I don't, who knows? But what you've got is, that's my best guess now, and there's some language evidence for it. We'll talk about that next time. And also, there are some other language families. I need to show you this map. Okay, this in red is the Uto-Aztecan language family, and we've shown you a number of its terms. We'll show you a bunch more next time. Up here is the Algonquian language family, or Algic it's called today, because they found that it's related to a couple of languages on the west coast, and they call the whole big thing Algic now, but Algonquian and Muskogean. Now remember, I showed you that map earlier of I don't know, between 50 and 80 language families in this same area altogether. But these 3 have some of the same stuff. Muskogean down here has some of the same vocabulary as Uto-Aztecan does. Another language, and Algic has interesting stuff. And in South America, you have the Quechua language of the Andes, which is spoken in about 5 different countries still, and that has interesting stuff. So next time we're going to talk about those 4 language families as a broader picture. Now this is, it has implications for, there are the Heartlanders, and maybe many of you or most of you are that, and then there are the Mesoamericanists, and I'm friends with both because I think they are both right, and they simply need to start working together. I think the Nephites did more traveling than anybody guesses. And we'll talk about that next time. And yeah, we're going to talk about this bigger. We'll give you more language data, talk about more things and more language families next time. But hey, let's stop now. We'll try to remember to start with slide 51. We got the 50, a nice even number. That'll be easy to remember. Okay, questions?
Yes, and because I get to be the host, then I get to ask the first question. Going back to the Hittites, Hittites invaded Egypt, and they dominated the Egyptian society for several generations. I'm
Uh-huh.
wondering, I'm wondering, because you indicated the Hittite language has had a profound impact upon our modern English. Is that coming through Egypt or is it separate?
That'd be Indo-European. So the big Indo-European language family is through Europe, and yeah, it just happens to be related to English from way back. So yeah, that would be from